It started with 3 sentences that still don't feel real when I say them out loud because I was in scrubs on my way to save a kid's life, and I got handcuffed in public for it. Yeah, that happened, and it didn't happen in some dark alley or hidden place. It happened in full daylight with people watching and cameras rolling. And the part that still messes with me is how ordinary the morning felt right before everything went wrong. I remember the sun bouncing off the snow like it was trying too hard to be cheerful, the kind of winter morning that looks peaceful but slices right through your clothes, and I remember thinking I was already late. Not panicked. Late. Just that focused kind of late you get when you've spent years learning how to run toward pressure instead of away from it, because when you're a surgeon, hesitation isn't philosophical, it's lethal, you know what I mean? I'd gotten the call before dawn, a 13-year-old kid, congenital heart issue. Sudden deterioration, the kind of case where every minute quietly stacks the odds against you. And I did what I always do. Cut corners where I could put on my scrubs at home, hair pulled back tight, badge clipped on without thinking, muscle memory taking over. And I remember my gas light flicking on and my stomach dropping just a little because it was annoying but manageable. Just a quick stop, 2 minutes. No big deal. That's what I told myself. And if I hadn't stopped, none of this would have happened, but that's the trap, isn't it? You only see the forks in the road after you've already taken one. The gas station was busy commuters' engines running that low hum of a city waking up, and I was halfway through filling the tank when a dark SUV pulled in behind me and blocked my car, which registered as odd but not threatening at first until the doors opened and 3 agents stepped out in heavy jackets with big yellow letters, and the lead one walked straight up to me and said, without a greeting, without even pretending to be human, "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle, we need to see your documentation." And I remember actually blinking like my brain was buffering because my first thought was that this was some kind of mistake, like maybe they thought I worked there or needed help, so I said automatically, "I'm a doctor. I'm on my way to an emergency surgery. Can this wait?" And the answer came fast and flat. "No, it can't." "Where were you born?" And there it was, that question that hits differently when it lands on you instead of someone on the evening news. And I said Philadelphia because that's the truth, because I didn't think truth needed decoration, and because somewhere deep down I still believed that explaining myself would fix things, and my pager buzzed again, that sharp vibration against my hip, and I didn't even look because I already knew what it said. Vitals dropping, urgency, escalating, the clock getting louder, and I told them again, slower this time, that a child was waiting for me, that every minute mattered, that I could have the hospital verify me in seconds. And one of them glanced at my hospital ID like it was a toy from a cereal box and said, "IDS could be faked." And something in my chest tightened. Not fear yet, more like disbelief curdling into something heavier, and I remember thinking how absurd it was that I was standing there in surgical scrubs in the cold next to a gas pump, explaining my existence to strangers who had already decided I didn't quite fit the picture they had in their heads. They started asking for papers I didn't carry because I'd never needed to passport, birth certificate, things people don't keep in their glove compartment, and I said they were at home because, of course, they were, and I offered alternatives, my medical license, my hospital credentials, names, phone numbers, any number of ways to verify me without stopping the world, and that's when the tone shifted, subtle but unmistakable, when the word detained entered the conversation and my body reacted before my mind caught up. Shoulders stiffening, breath shortening, because detained isn't just a word, it's a door closing, and I said probably too sharply, "You can't be serious. I'm trying to save a life," and the response came back like it was printed on a card. "We're enforcing federal law." And around us, the pump clicked off, my tank full, my usefulness to myself suddenly irrelevant, and people started watching phones coming out. Voices rising, someone saying this was wrong, someone else telling them to let me go, and I felt this strange split inside me, one part hyper-aware of everything, the sunlight, the cold, the cameras, the other part screaming about the kid on the table who didn't know any of this was happening. And I tried one last time, quieter now because I could feel the ground shifting. "Please call the hospital, ask for my colleague, he'll confirm everything." And the lead agent shook his head and told me to turn around and put my hands on the car. And for a second I didn't move. Not because I thought I could win, but because I needed them to see me, to actually see me. And when I realized they weren't going to, I turned, placed my hands on the hood, felt the cold metal bite through my gloves, and the handcuffs snapped shut around my wrists with a finality that still echoes when I think about it. I didn't expect to cry, but tears came anyway. Hot against the freezing air, my pager buzzing again, falling into the snow. At some point, still screaming silently while I was guided into the back of the SUV, the door closing like punctuation, and inside it smelled like plastic and authority. and I shook uncontrollably from the cold, from shock, from the dawning understanding that I had no leverage here, that my education, my titles, my years of saving lives meant nothing in this moment. And I said, please, again softer, almost embarrassed by how small it sounded. And they told me everything would be verified at the facility, like that was supposed to be comforting. The drive felt endless, red lights stretching time thin, and at the detention center they processed me like I was any other body, fingerprints taken by hands that didn't know what mine had done, photos snapped, my phone taken while it buzzed and buzzed with missed calls, and I gave them everything they asked for: my name, my date of birth, my social security number, my license number. And I remember saying, exhausted, "You'll see. I'm telling the truth, not angrily, just matter of fact, because truth has weight, even when people pretend it doesn't, and the system confirmed it in minutes. Citizen by birth, licensed physician, no record, nothing." And the room went quiet in that way that only happens when people realize they've crossed a line they can't uncross. They released me nearly 3 hours after it began, offered an apology that felt like an afterthought. There appears to have been a mistake, and I remember looking at the agent and saying, "No, you chose not to listen, because that was the truth." And when I finally got to the hospital, when I finally stood in the ICU, I learned what those hours had cost. The kid had crashed while waiting. They saved him. Barely complications layered onto trauma that never needed to happen. And I sat there, hands shaking, guilt pressing down on my chest, even though I knew logically it wasn't mine to carry. And that night alone I cried harder than I had in years, not just for him, but for the realization that none of my accomplishments had protected me, that in the wrong moment to the wrong people I was still just suspicious, still someone who needed to prove she belonged. I didn't stay quiet after that, because staying quiet felt like agreeing, and the lawsuit that followed dragged everything into the light: the baseless tip, the lack of verification, the choices made in the name of procedure that put a child's life at risk. And when I testified, I didn't dramatize it. I just told the truth, that I became a doctor to save lives. And that morning I was treated like I didn't belong in my own country, and the jury didn't take long. The verdict was unanimous, the damages significant, the message loud. But even now people ask me if it felt like justice, and I tell them the money was never the point. The point was being seen, being believed. Forcing a pause in a system that moves too fast over people it doesn't bother to understand, because here's the part that still keeps me up sometimes. How many times has this happened without cameras, without witnesses, without someone with enough resources to fight back? How many people didn't get released in 3 hours? How many lives quietly absorbed the cost? And that's why I'm telling you this, not as a speech, not as a lecture, but as someone who lived it, because somewhere out there someone is going to say this was just protocol or just a mistake. And I want you to ask yourself where the line is when authority becomes arrogance, when assumptions become dangerous, and whether we're okay with a system that demands papers louder than it listens to pleas. So tell me what you think. Was this justice or just the bare minimum? And if you've ever seen something like this or lived it yourself, drop it in the comments, because the only thing that lets this keep happening